Welcome to the maiden edition of The Couch with me, Pratt. This show focuses on social issues and the human interest stories. We are trying to, together as a society, find solutions to some of the issues that trouble us. We would also hope for a lot of interaction, so you'd have to follow us on our social media pages. Stick with me. Quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Hello viewers, we're still on The Couch with me, Pratt. The segment of the show now is The Brief, and today we are discussing social media. We have with us David A. Asiedu. David is a partner at a law firm. It's called Oxford and Bowman. David is a blogger. Actually, his blog, some of the first blogs that I started frequenting. David, you know this? And he's very active on social media. And so if we are discussing social media, then I think it's only apt that we bring David in for the legal brief of the show. David, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I always ask, is the couch comfortable?
Comfortable enough.
Good. David, let's dive straight in. What kinds of trouble can somebody get into?
Well, straight away,
with social media. Yes.
Posts, then I can think of 5, but maybe 3 for the purposes of this program. One would be where you use text or pictures, usually. It could also be music. But essentially, when you post anything that could cause the society to lose respect for somebody, it's called defamation in law. You could get into trouble that way. Another is if you use speech, essentially disparaging remarks about any disparaging remarks about, well, insults, but it goes beyond that, about any segment of society with distinct characteristics. It could be about women, it could be about a particular race, or about a particular religion. And we call it hate speech. And it's in the Constitution. Hate speech is frowned upon by the Constitution. So you could get into trouble by using hate speech. Another is if you take somebody's ideas or somebody's work and you pass them off. Essentially, you pretend that they're yours. And you could get into trouble for that, and it's called plagiarism. There are a few others. One that's criminal, which was almost a dead law, and then it came up in the not too far off past, which is causing fear and panic.
Causing fear and panic?
Yeah.
I remember that law.
Yeah. It's criminal, and it's where you make a false statement that causes the society to be basically afraid for their safety. And then there's one which is a bit funny, insulting a chief or a traditional...
Wait, that's a law?
It is. It's a criminal offense to insult a chief.
In our constitution in Ghana?
Not in the constitution, but in our laws. It used to be an offense to insult the president, but it was taken out, so it would appear that you can insult the president, but you can't insult a chief.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, David, let's dive straight into human rights. I think that social media and everything that affords us the rights of expression comes back to, a fundamental human right, our rights to be heard.
How do you balance it?
Exactly.
Well, essentially, everybody should be guided by the statement, I do not know who made it, that your freedom ends where my nose begins. The Constitution guarantees the rights of everybody, but it realizes that your rights may be in conflict with my rights too. So while you are entitled to speak your mind, which is essentially what social media is about, you're entitled to communicate whatever it is you please. You must make sure that your communication does not hurt my human rights. So by all means, your human rights should be respected, but the respect of your human rights should not be inconsistent with respect for another person's human rights. It's a balancing act.
It's a fine
So
balance.
they are not absolute rights. They are kind of regulated. There aren't any human rights which have absolutely no fetters or no limits. It won't be possible.
It won't be possible. So let's say that I get on social media, David, and I insult you. Can you sue me?
Absolutely. If I feel that your insult, sometimes people are just angry and they're in a fight with somebody else. I mean, you come across instances, I think it's mostly on Twitter, but it could happen on Facebook, where you find two different people. Sometimes they are really public figures having a back and forth, insulting each other.
Yeah.
And if it's understood by the society that these people are merely angry with each other, then it pretty much can be swept under the carpet. But if you say anything which makes me feel that people who heard or read what you put up on Facebook, for example, have lost respect for me, I can and will sue you.
Okay, but who do you sue? Because sometimes, especially on Twitter, since you brought it up, there are lots of fake accounts and people with all sorts of names on Twitter. So there's that, virtual personality vis-a-vis a real personality. So in such an instance, who do you sue?
You sue the person who made the statement. The person who wants to sue has to prove that it is X, Y, or Z who made those statements. So if you can prove that it's not a real account, but somebody made their own account and made it look like you, probably because you are a public figure or if you are a kind of celebrity, then you will walk free. But generally, it's the person who goes to court who has to prove their case. If you can't prove that a Twitter account which purports to be me is really mine, then you can sue, but you probably will not win.
What about people who are employed specifically to communicate on behalf of a company? How liable are they for the kind of things they put on social media?
I'll start by saying that generally because of human rights, the law basically treats everybody the same. But you have to understand that in practice, certain people may be treated differently by the law. And you find out that often famous journalists who work for BBC, Al Jazeera, have their own Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, or blogs. And it's a given that whenever they are expressing an opinion on their personal social media platform, they always put it out there, make it clear that this does not reflect the views of my employer, or these are my own personal opinions. It is very important that you keep the two separate and distinct. So under normal circumstances, an employee should be able to voice their views on social media without any problems with their employer. But to be fair, when certain people are employed in communication positions or as official communicators for companies, they have to be very careful because they're always walking a very fine line. If you put out official communication on official social media platforms, I think you are generally safe. But if you mix it up, and I mean, if today you put out something on LinkedIn or Facebook, and it's your opinion, because it's your own Facebook page, and tomorrow you put up something on the same page, which is still yours, but which is understood to be official communication on behalf of your employer, then you are mixing the two. In that way, I think you are walking into slippery ground, because the truth is, if you are today talking for your employer on a particular account and tomorrow you are speaking for yourself, then your employer becomes interested in what it is you're saying. Every company has a brand, Every company wants to be associated with certain things. Every company does not want to be associated with other things. So if you have a social media platform and you are mixing up the two, under our labor law, a company or an employer has the right to insist that an employee protects its interests. So if your employer determines that what you are doing, it must be a fair determination, I should add. But if your employer determines that what you're doing is going to hurt my business, then unfortunately, in an extreme scenario, they have the right to let you go. And it's easy to make an employee go in Ghana. I mean, in labor law, it's easy to terminate the relationship by giving notice, no reasons.
You don't have to give reasons.
No, so you can quit your job. You can fire your boss, which is really what it is, by giving notice. There is almost always a pre-described notice period. You can give it and walk off, or your boss can give it to you and fire you.
Wow.
So I honestly feel that communicators, as a matter of practice, have a slightly higher standard that they must be held to than
the rest
ordinary
of us.
users of social media platforms who also have a job somewhere.
David, our time is up. But,
Okay.
you know, just a brief one, briefly. Does the state have a right to interfere in how the people use social media? Does the state have that right?
Absolutely. The state has a right to interfere with everything.
Okay.
I keep telling people I talk to about social media that it isn't really a virtual world. It is an extension of the real world. Bad things can happen on social media. Crimes, Sakawa and other things, crimes 419 are committed on social media. No responsible government, not the US government, not the Russian government, certainly not the Ghanaian government, would stand by and leave social media to self-regulate. So there must be regulation of social media, just as there is regulation in the real world, but it must be reasonable regulation.
Thank you so much, David, for this interaction. I have learned a lot. Viewers, I hope that you've picked up one or two things too. We are going now to the couch discussion. Stay with us. Quick break.